Project One has some specific requirements regarding the document size, the resolution, and the color space. And the best way to ensure that you meet those requirements is to start by creating a brand new document and then adding your images to that document. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to do that. I have Photoshop open here, and I'm going to click Create New, and this is where we get the new document panel. So working down the right hand side, first of all, we want to give it a name, and you really need to give it your name as well as Project One. You'd be surprised at how many projects I get without a student's name on it. So call it Project One and your name, not your name, you know, your name. Then we're going to put in the dimensions of the document. So it's required that it's 6 inches by 7.5 inches. Now it doesn't matter if you want to do a landscape or a portrait. So I input 6 inches, make sure it says 6 inches in this field here. And I put the size in, but if I decide, I don't want to do a portrait, I want to do a landscape, I can just click right here and it'll switch those numbers around. So we have 7.5 inches wide by 6 inches tall. The resolution for this project should be 200 pixels per inch. And that's how many pixels would be in a linear inch when it prints. So if you printed this out on your printer, it would print out at 7.5 inches wide, and every inch in that 7.5 inches will have 200 pixels. And then we have color mode. We want to make sure that it's RGB, and then down here in the color profile, sRGB is usually standard. Make sure that you don't have artboards checked. You'll learn about artboards at the end of this semester. If you set this document up to have an artboard now, it's likely to confuse you along the way. So make sure this box isn't checked. And then we'll click Create. And now we have a brand new canvas to create the project on. Next, you're going to want to add some images to your canvas. And there's multiple ways to do that in Photoshop. A little later in the semester, I have a video for you called 8 ways to combine images into a single document. I think there's probably even a couple more beyond those 8. Right now, I don't want to overwhelm you with all those different ways to do it, so I'm going to show you 2 ways that you're probably likely to use. The first one is you can come up here to File and then down here to Place Embedded. There's 2 options, Place Embedded, Place Linked. If you place Linked, the image remains linked to the one that's on your computer. So then when you turn the project in and hand it to me and I open your file, it's going to look for that file, the one that's linked. So we don't want to use place linked. You want to use place embedded, and then the content is actually embedded in the document. So I'm going to select an image here and then click place. And then I'll just scale it up to fill the whole canvas. By doing this, you don't have to worry about those hard edges. If you just place all of your images and you fill the whole canvas with it, then you're not going to have to worry about feathering out edges or masking things out. Then click the check up here at the top or hit the Enter key on your keyboard and that'll commit that. The other way that you're likely to want to do this is to do a copy and paste. Let's take this sand waves. I'll double click on that and open that in Photoshop. So if you look at the top here, I now have 2 documents open, the new one I created and the sand waves. If I do a Command A or a Control A, it selects the entire canvas. If I do a Command C or a Control C, it copies it to my clipboard. If I click on the tab here for the other document, that becomes the active document. It comes forward. And then if I do a Command V or a Control V, it'll paste what I copied into this document. And if we look at the layer panel, we see that it added a layer. Obviously, the resolution of the sand waves is much, much larger than the document I'm working on because it came in scaled really large. So I'm going to actually zoom out on this canvas so that we can see the bounding box. I'll do that by holding my Command and Spacebar together, which is my favorite way. It gives me the zoom tool. And I'll scrubby zoom by moving to the left. So now we can see, I made it really small so that when I select this layer and I go to transform, if we come over here to transform or free transform, we see that the keyboard shortcut is Command T or Control T. That gives us the bounding box of the entire layer, and then I can scale it down so that I get more of that texture in here. So those are two ways to add multiple images into the document. There's a very significant difference in using these two different methods. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this with the Command 0 so that we can see the entire canvas. The one that I did a copy and paste on, it just says layer 1. And notice that the icon for the picture in the layers panel, it doesn't have anything in the lower left hand corner. If we look down here at the Botanic Nights layer, we see this little picture in the lower right hand corner. That tells us that it's a smart object. I'll be covering smart objects more later in the semester. The main thing that you need to understand now is if it's a smart object, let's select, I turn the visibility off on the sand by clicking on the eyeball. I'll select on Botanic Nights to make it active. Now, because this is a smart object, I can't paint on it. So if I go to my brush and I try and paint, I get this message. The smart object must be rasterized before proceeding. So I'm going to say cancel. If you really want to paint on your layer after you've placed it, you can say OK, and then it'll let you paint on it. Painting isn't required in Project 1 though, so what you might want to do is the clone stamp. And again, the clone stamp, if I do an Option or Control click and then try and clone it, it says the object must be rasterized before proceeding. If I say OK, this is no longer a smart object, and now it'll let me clone. So you can do that for your project. I just want you to understand that that's why you might be getting that message. Now, when you do a copy and paste, like layer 1, it's not a smart object. So right away you can clone on it or use any of your retouching tools that you might want to use. So I don't know why we're not, the reason why we're not seeing what I cloned, I'm kind of glad this mistake happened because so much learning comes out of mistakes. Over here in my layer panel, I still had Botanic Nights selected, not the sand layer, layer 1. So if I click on layer 1, it's now the active layer. And then I can Option click here on the shadow and then clone it over. So we have two of those lines. So that's just a really basic overview of how to get started with Project 1. Create a new document and place your images into that document, and you can use any method you want to get those images in. If you're brand new to Photoshop, you're probably going to want to stick with one of the two that I just showed you here. You can go to File, Place Embedded, which creates a smart object that can't be painted on or cloned on, or you can do a copy and paste from another document. I hope you find that really helpful. You can always reach out to me if you have more questions.